For today's Monday makeup lesson, I'm going to show you how to create this classic smoky eye using one neutral eyeshadow. You can even use your bronzer for this or your favorite transition shade. And then a smoky shadow, and I'm using black. You can use any dark shade that you like. It's a super easy look to recreate, so let's get started. As always, I've started off by priming my eyelids using the Urban Decay Primer Potion. You can use concealer and a little bit of setting powder if you prefer. You basically want to create a blank canvas for you to work on. This is particularly important when you're doing a smoky eye. It'll also give the shadows something to hold on to. The first shadow that we're working on is that neutral shade. This should be at least one shade darker than your skin tone and at least 2 shades lighter than the smoky shadow that you're using. So just adjust this depending on your own skin tone and your preferred shades. You're also going to need a blending brush. We're actually going to be using 2, one for applying and one for blending. We're going to start off with the applying one and take a little bit of eyeshadow and start to work this from the outer edge of the eye, blending in. Instead of starting directly on the outer edge, I like to come in a little bit. This will just help with the blending process to make sure we're not blending our eyeshadows out too far. We want to keep our application in between these 2 lines. For regulars here on the makeup chair, you guys probably already know this, but for those who are beginners, you basically want to keep your eyeshadows blending in from this point. And to find this point, you're going to use the edge of your nose, edge of your eye, and edge of your brow, and keep your eyeshadows in from this point, and then create a parallel line for the inner corner, stopping at the tear duct. Don't worry too much about the inner corner, just really make sure you're focusing on the outer corner, blending over and back. So how do you blend? Well, what I like to do is I like to keep my hand quite low when I blend. This will just allow me to sweep over and back in the crease of the eye. And this is where the lid creases into the eye shape. You want to keep this nice and soft and blended. It should fade pretty much upwards towards the brows, but by the time it reaches the brows, it should be very sheer. You should also apply the shadow all over the lid. This will actually create a layered effect and help with the blending process for your smoky shade. As we're not using any other eyeshadows today, I really want to make sure this blend is perfect, so I'm taking a clean blending brush, so this doesn't have any product on it, and we're going to sweep this over and back to blend out any harsh lines. Because we're only working with 2, we want to make sure we're really blending, so that's why we're using a clean blending brush to soften any harsh lines. And now we're going to take our smoky shade. I'm going to use a flat brush, but also my fingertips to apply the shadow. You really want the darkness to be at the lash line, and there's 2 ways of doing this. Keeping your hand nice and low, or lifting your hand high and coming at the lash line at a higher angle. Do whatever works for you. And then I'm also going to be using my fingertips to apply it on the lid. This just allows me to work the black shadow into the lid. Once I've done that, I then take my blending brush. This is the one that was used previously, and softly sweep over and back to blend out what I applied with my fingertips. Now this brush will have a little bit left over from the previous shade, but that will actually help with the blending process. And all you want to do is to apply and blend until you get the depth of color that you like. Making sure that that lash line is nice and deep and dark and blending upwards into nothing by the time it reaches the brows. Once I apply mascara, I then take my lashes and I apply that with some duo glue. And I also apply lots of mascara. And that's the finished look. If you recreate it, I would love to see it. Definitely let me know. Comment below if you have any questions. For today's Monday makeup lesson, I'm going to show you how to create this look using one double-ended brush, one eyeliner, and one eyeshadow. So let's get started. We're going to start off with the shadow, and I'm using what I would typically use as my transition shade, but you can pick any shade that you want, provided that it's at least 1 shade darker than your skin tone. And I'm going to take the blending side of this Blank Canvas Cosmetics E40 E41 brush. This is the soft, fluffy side, and we're going to start to apply this starting on the outer edge, blending across the lid and into the crease. I just wanted to pause it real quick here to show you that it can look a little bit patchy when you start to blend an eyeshadow. The reason for this is because my base was a little damp, The best way to fix this is just to keep blending and applying a very, very small amount of shadow and just keep that blending nice and light, really working it across the lid. Once you got a nice wash of color across the lid and slightly into the crease, we're then going to work on the crease a little bit more. So your crease is where your eyelid creases into your eye shape, and basically means anywhere above this point. But the deepest, darkest tone should be right in that crease area and then blending up to nothing. Now I want to talk about two ways to blend. One is to keep your hand high. This will prevent your eyeshadows from blending up too far, so it keeps it as a low blend. So keeping your hand high on the face will provide a lower blend. Another way to blend is to keep your hand quite low and flat against the face. This means that the tip of the brush is going to very lightly blend above the crease. Two very different ways of blending, but creating pretty much the same results. Now that we have our base done, we're going to move on to using the liner. The liner that I've chosen is quite similar to the shadows that we're using, so they're going to work really well together. So I'm going to take the pencil and I'm just going to glide this on this outer third of the lid. This is going to work as our kind of contoured effect. So apply a very small amount of this in this area, and then you're going to take your flat side of the brush. This is the double ended brush I talked about. And you're going to very slightly smudge and blend this in. And what you want to do is just to very slowly build this up by applying some of the pencil and then smudging it out. The cool thing about this pencil is the more you work with it, the deeper and darker it goes, which I really like. Now I want to take that liner and use it in a different way. I have that contoured effect on the outer third done. What I want to do is just to glide the pencil across the lash line. And this will give you a very different effect because we're not going to smudge this in. I'm also going to apply this along my waterline and underneath the eyes as well. Just a nice simple look. Apply some lashes, lots of mascara, and there you go. Couldn't be easier. Just one shadow, one pencil, and you're good to go. If you'd like to see any more techniques, definitely hit that subscribe. For today's makeup lesson, I'm going to show you guys how to use this e.l.f. palette. This is the Sunset collection, so it's got pinks and golds, and it's a really easy palette to use. As always, before we start any makeup look, we're going to apply a primer. This is going to work as a base on our lids, give our eyeshadow something to hold on to, and also help our shadows last longer. And bear in mind, you don't have to use Urban Decay, you can always use the e.l.f. primer, which works great too. Now for brushes, you're going to need at least two different brushes. A smaller one, I'm using a pencil brush, and then a blending one, or referred to as a fluffy brush. But these two brushes is all you're really going to need for this look. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to apply the base shade all over the lid. So this is the lightest shade from the palette. What this is going to do is to set the primer in place, but also give us a nice base to work on. So if your primer happens to be a clear primer, this will also give you a little bit more of a blank canvas to work on, or it will just create a nice powdery effect so that we have something to blend over the top of. I'm then going to take the matte shade from the palette and we're going to blend this over and back in the crease of the eye. So apply a very small amount on the brush to begin with and just swirl this back and forth in the crease of the eye. Try to make sure not to blend it up too high. If you are blending up too high, just make sure there's not too much on the brush. That's the really important part. The depth of the color needs to be where the eyelid creases into the eye shape. And then I'm going to take the darker shade using that same blending brush and apply this on the outer edge and also deep in that crease. So keep the brush higher while you're applying, and this will drop it down lower, so it's going to apply deeper in the crease of the eye. And this will just add a little bit more depth to this look. I'm then going to take a mixture of the two shades, which is like a pink and a gold, and I mix them up together and apply this over the lid. Now this took a lot of time. I really had to pack these on because they went on quite sheer. So bear that in mind. This palette was a little tricky to use, I will say that. On camera it just did not do it justice. In real life, however, it did actually work pretty well, but that is very common with this sort of cheaper. Welcome back to another makeup lesson. Today we're going to create a classic party look. This is for so many different occasions and it's really easy to create as well. But before we get started, I wanted to let you know that this video is sponsored by Audible, a leading provider in premium audiobooks as well as podcasts, new shows, original series, and lots more. And you can start listening today with a 30-day Audible trial, and your first audiobook plus 2 Audible originals are free. Visit audible.com/themakeupchair or text the makeup chair to 500, which is really cool, but only works in the US. But check it out. I am currently listening to my girl Melanie Murphy's book, Fully Functioning Human Almost. I adore her as a person and she's a fellow Irish YouTuber, so I highly recommend listening to Melanie narrate her own book. It's brilliant, it's witty, it's full of honesty and just general loveliness that is Melanie Murphy. I'm new to Audible myself. I just started listening in the car, but I find when I listen when I'm doing my makeup, it really relaxes me, but it also inspires me at the same time. So give it a try. I have the link in the description box. Go to audible.com/themakeupchair or text the makeup chair to 500. Now with that said, and my audiobook playing in the background, let's get started. So as with every look that we create, we always want to start off with a clean base, and to do that you want to use a primer. So you can either mix your primer with your concealer or you can use a tinted primer. This one by Urban Decay, it's a classic, it's one of my absolute favorites, it's my kind of go-to. Basically all you want to do is just apply this all over the lid. It will create a blank canvas for us to work on, disguise any discoloration, while also helping our eyeshadows last longer because it gives them something to hold on to, which is a really important part. Now let's recap on parts of the eye because I always get asked about this. So I like to split the eye into 3 sections. The lid, the crease area, this is where the lid creases into the eye shape, and then the brow bone, which is technically not the brow bone, it's just underneath the brows. I then like to split the lid into 3 sections as well. So we have an inner, a middle, and an outer. And then you have your 3 liner areas. So we have your waterline, which is the lower part that you can see. We have the tight line or the upper waterline, which is underneath. And then we also have your lash line, which is that line across right by your lashes. And these are the kind of main areas that you apply liner. To create any eye makeup look, I usually use about 4 different eyeshadows. A highlight, contour, and a mid-tone. Your mid-tone is basically in between your light and your dark. And then I also have a fade shade. The fade shade is that bright orange. Don't get scared, it's okay, we're only going to apply a very small amount of it, but it does make a big difference, and I'll explain why in a bit. I've also added in 2 other things, a metallic eyeshadow and a glitter. Now for brushes, you really only need like 2 or 3. A blending brush and a pencil brush. Now I would recommend having actually 2 blending brushes, but that's optional. One for applying, one for blending, just so you don't muddy up your look. And then also a flat brush. This is for cutting the crease. If you don't plan on cutting your crease, you can always use your fingertips for what we're gonna do later. So there's all your tools. Now let's start applying. So we're going to start off with our mid-tone and we're going to use our blending brush. You always want to make sure you're using your blending brush for your mid-tone to create that really soft effect. Now a lot of people refer to this as a transition shade. Totally fine. I call it mid-tone because it's a middle tone, but it's totally up to you. You're going to blend this over and back and slowly build this up because your lid's going to be a little tacky. If you go in with too much eyeshadow to begin with, it's just going to grab hold of certain areas and not blend. You also want to hold your brush in the center of the handle and keep it at about eye level, so a little higher than normal, and sweep this over and back in the crease. Don't worry if you get a little bit of this on the lid because we will be cutting the crease. In fact, I actually kind of want you to get it onto the lid. And I also want you to get it on the outer third of the lid especially. This is going to work as a base for our contour. Once you slowly build this up, you should get a look that looks like this. Don't worry if it looks kind of muddy on the lid, that's totally fine. Just make sure that blend upwards towards the brow bone is nice and smooth. Your contour is next, and this should be at least 1 shade darker than your skin tone. You're going to apply this with the smaller of the brushes that we've been using, and I want you to tap this. So literally hold the brush right in the center to get maximum control and just tap this on that outer edge. So the outer third of the lid. Then what I want you to do is to create a cut crease line. So I want you to raise your eyebrow, and I want you to look down in a mirror and tap this along the edge where we're going to cut the crease. So don't blend this up too far because we don't want to get this contour into the crease area. We want to keep it nice and low. Your mid-tone is always higher. So just apply this almost like you're attempting to hit the crease line. Then take your clean blending brush Holding it right down the end of the brush, sweep this over and back just to soften out any harsh lines. So this is just going to basically deepen the crease and just apply a little bit more of a depth look, so when we cut the crease it's going to look even sharper. Okay, now we're going to cut the crease. So you're going to take your concealer brush with a little bit of concealer on it, and I want you to really squash this down so it's nice and flat. I want it to look flat the whole time you're applying it as well. If it starts to kind of move and kind of spread out as you're applying it, squash it back down again. And you can do this between your fingertips or onto a palette or the back of your hand. I also like to keep my mirror handy just so that I can really concentrate on what I'm doing. So just follow the natural shape or create the illusion of a shape of a lid, and you can rest your pinky on your cheek for support. And what I do is I barely touch the skin as I go around the edges and then pull it downwards across the lid. I like to raise my eyebrow because it kind of elongates your eye. If you find that your eyebrow doesn't support your lid shape, you can always use your finger on the outer edge to kind of create more of a tight effect. We're going to move on to now applying our highlighter using that same brush, and we're going to go over everything that we've already cut. So you're basically going to create kind of a sharper effect, a brighter effect, and your highlighter is going to go on much nicer. I'm also going to take this highlighter just underneath the brow bone as well, but I never like to have a really sharp brow bone. I like to then take my fingertip and just kind of wipe away the excess. So now we have a divide between that inner corner and the outer corner. So what we want to do is to create a fade. So we're going to use our fade shade. And take a little bit of this orange or yellow or even a pink would work. Take it on a blending brush and just apply this right where the two of them meet, and you can also blend this into the crease as well. At least that's my take on a fade shade. I don't think anybody else knows what it is, except for me and you guys. But it's awesome. So here's a look that you can basically complete at this stage, but let's just add to it to give it more of like a fun party look. We're going to apply that beautiful shimmering coppery shade with a damp brush. Going to intensify it a little bit more. We're going to apply it over everything that we've already applied, starting in the middle of the lid, and then blending outwards and inwards. And basically this is going to go over everything that we've applied and create slightly different tones. We can also apply the glitter with that same brush just to add a little bit of fun. Next, we're going to go in with liner. Don't panic. All we're going to do is just run along the lash line. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy, no wing. And if you haven't seen it already, I did an in-depth video on how to apply basic liner. I'm also going to apply lots and lots of mascara. Don't skip this step, it's really important. And if you're not a big fan of applying falsies, which I will be applying, you can always just layer lots of layers of mascara. Kind of does the same thing. And I also like to curl my lashes after everything dries out. It kind of creates the illusion that you're wearing falsies, but I will be applying them. Now that the falsies are on, we are ready to move on to the next step. So for the next step, I'm going to take an angled brush and a little bit of black eyeshadow and push this right underneath those lashes. I've already applied lower lash mascara already, so we're basically just creating the illusion of a deeper effect. We're then going to take a little bit of that brown and just run this along the edge as well. This will create a softer effect so it's not just harsh black. And I also then take my pinky and I just kind of rub everything in. This just softens out any harsh lines. And you can also take that fade shade if you wanted and worked around the edge too. And there you go. That is the finished look. I hope that you guys will check this one out. Super easy, fun, and works on so many different people. You can even swap out that copper shade for silver or gold, use cool tones or warm tones, and just change it out for whatever wave you like. Hope you